When the world begins to lose faith in the dollar, a question inevitably rises. What comes next? For nearly a century, the US dollar has been the backbone of global finance, the world's reserve currency, the benchmark for trade, and the silent judge of every economy. Yet today, cracks are beginning to show. Countries are seeking alternatives, debt is spiraling out of control, and the very trust that once made the dollar untouchable is fading. And in that uncertainty, one name keeps echoing through the halls of the digital age: Bitcoin. To understand where we might be headed, we must first look back to the time when the dollar's dominance began. After World War II, the United States emerged not only as a military superpower but also as an economic one. The Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944 established the dollar as the global standard, pegged to gold. Every other currency was linked to it, and gold became the anchor of trust. But by 1971, that trust began to waver. President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard, effectively transforming the dollar into fiat money backed not by gold, but by faith. For decades, that faith was enough. America's political stability, its military strength, and the global dependence on US trade made the dollar the symbol of power. But faith is fragile. Once lost, it's nearly impossible to restore. As the years passed, the US printed more money, borrowing from its own future. Trillions were added to the national debt, and inflation quietly eroded the dollar's purchasing power. To the average person, the dollar still felt strong. But to those who studied the numbers, economists, investors, and governments, something was shifting beneath the surface. Today, we see the consequences of that shift. Global powers are beginning to move away from the dollar. Nations like China, Russia, and even Saudi Arabia have started trading in their own currencies. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is openly discussing a new currency to rival the US dollar. Central banks across the world are buying gold at record levels, perhaps as a shield against what they see coming next. The world is searching for a new system, one that can restore trust. And that's where Bitcoin enters the story. Born in 2009, Bitcoin was more than a digital currency, it was a rebellion. Created in the ashes of the 2008 financial crisis, it was designed to exist beyond the reach of banks and governments. Its creator, known only as Satoshi Nakamoto, left behind a message in Bitcoin's very first block. The Times 03, Jan. 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It was both a warning and a declaration, the birth of a new kind of money, one that could not be printed, censored, or controlled. At first, few took it seriously. Economists dismissed it as a fad, a playground for geeks and libertarians. But as years passed, Bitcoin refused to die. Instead, it grew stronger. Every time a financial institution collapsed or a government printed more money, Bitcoin's purpose became clearer. It was the anti-dollar limited, decentralized, and immune to manipulation. Unlike the dollar, which can be printed infinitely, there will only ever be 21 million bitcoins. That fixed supply gives it a quality the dollar no longer has: scarcity. In a world drowning in debt and inflation, scarcity has become a form of salvation. But can Bitcoin truly replace the dollar? That's the real question, and the answer is more complex than it seems. For Bitcoin to become the foundation of the global economy, it needs more than just believers. It needs infrastructure, stability, and mass adoption. While it has made progress with countries like El Salvador recognizing it as legal tender, Bitcoin still faces enormous challenges. Its price volatility makes it unpredictable. Its transaction speed is slower than traditional payment systems, and governments fear it because it represents a loss of control. Still, change often begins with resistance. The younger generation digital natives trust Bitcoin in a way their parents trusted banks. To them, Bitcoin is not just money. It's freedom. Freedom from inflation, freedom from centralized power, and freedom from the corruption that has plagued financial systems for centuries. We're living in a time of transition, a global tug-of-war between the old world and the new. The old world is built on paper money, central banks, and political promises. The new world is digital, transparent, and decentralized. As we move deeper into the 21st century, the conflict between these two systems will intensify. Governments will try to maintain their dominance through central bank digital currencies, digital versions of their fiat money, but still under their control. Meanwhile, Bitcoin and other decentralized assets will continue to rise as symbols of financial independence. It's a battle for the future of money itself. Imagine a world where the dollar is no longer the default currency. Oil is traded in Bitcoin, nations store digital assets instead of gold, and individuals move their wealth across borders without permission. In such a world, the very concept of power changes. It's no longer held by governments, but by the people, or at least by those who understand how to navigate this new landscape. Of course, not everyone wants this change. For those who benefit from the current system, large corporations, central banks, and political elites, Bitcoin represents a threat. It undermines the foundations of their influence. And that's why the resistance against it is so strong. We see it in the regulations, in the warnings from financial institutions, and in the skepticism of mainstream economists. But history tells us that every revolution is met with denial before acceptance. The internet was once dismissed as a passing trend. Today, it runs the world. The same might one day be said of Bitcoin. But before that happens, the world may have to go through a storm. When trust in the dollar collapses, chaos will follow. Markets could crash, inflation could skyrocket, and global trade could fracture. In that moment, people will search for stability, something they can believe in again. And while gold will always have its place, Bitcoin has something gold never had: speed, accessibility, and a global digital network. If that moment arrives, Bitcoin won't need to replace the dollar overnight. It will simply coexist quietly, becoming a parallel system. And over time, as more people use it, that parallel system could grow into the dominant one. Some argue that Bitcoin's energy consumption and volatility make it unsuitable as a currency. And they're right for now. But technology evolves. Layer 2 solutions like the Lightning Network are already improving Bitcoin's speed and efficiency. What seems impossible today might be normal tomorrow. We've seen this pattern before. Every great transformation in history, from paper money to credit cards, from the telegraph to the internet, began as an experiment. And Bitcoin is the next experiment in the evolution of money. The question isn't whether Bitcoin will replace the dollar. The real question is, what happens when people stop believing in paper money altogether? Because at its core, money is belief. The only reason a dollar has value is because we all agree it does. If that collective belief fades, if people start trusting code more than politicians, then the financial world as we know it will change forever. Maybe Bitcoin won't be the final form of money. Maybe something even more advanced will come after it. But it has already started the most important conversation of our time. What should money really be? As the world questions the dollar's future, Bitcoin stands as both a challenge and a promise. A challenge to the old system built on debt and control, and a promise of a new one built on transparency and mathematics. So when the day comes that the world no longer believes in the dollar, will Bitcoin replace everything? Perhaps not immediately. But make no mistake, the seeds of that future are already being planted. And once trust shifts, it never fully returns. In the end, the fall of one currency may not be the end of civilization, but the beginning of a new one. A civilization where money is no longer printed, but mined. Where value is not dictated, but discovered. The age of the dollar may be fading, but the story of Bitcoin, that's only just beginning.